Okay, people are starting to stream in now. Thank you everybody for taking part. As you know, these series FNI Connect are sponsored by Screen Skills Ireland and funded. So that's where they're free. So you're getting like really amazing people, helping us out. And that's why it's FOC. So my thanks to Screen Skills Ireland and the amazing work they do, particularly upping their game during this really, really peculiar time in our lives. So if there's any positives or any silver linings, it's that people are available to film and TV professionals over the last 6 months to give a little bit more time to help up and coming filmmakers and writers. So you're all very welcome along.
Okay, so it's no coincidence that I'm playing a campfire. Welcome around the FNI campfire tonight. Campfires are for storytelling and community building. My interest in working with FNI is as a member of that community and helping to develop and grow it. We're all peers, we all have the same struggles, no matter where we are in our career. It's a lifelong learning experience, and I'm always learning. And I encourage you to think of, if you're still emerging, starting out, everything you're doing is training for your future. We keep training all the time. So the only difference between myself and Saul tonight and anybody else here, or anybody else in FNI, is the length of our experience. And, we're here to pass it on. So, yeah. So if I switch over, I'll start sharing the PowerPoint. Okay, so welcome. Thanks for turning up on time. Thumbs up if the PowerPoint is sharing. Yeah, cool. Okay, so this is a series that developed with Paul and Ray at FNI. Thankfully, it's been supported by Screen Skills Ireland. I thought we'd look at the idea of this sort of supposed conflict between art and commerce. And I didn't want to bore you with me all night. So, and also I've picked three lovely friends of mine I've known for a very long time, who are always very generous with their time and have great things to share. And some of you were here on Monday night, you heard Stephen Cleary. And tonight Saul is going to be fantastic. So Saul, I've known nearly 30 years from when I started. I was in Belfast, he was in Liverpool. The official blurb for Saul is as follows. Saul has produced 3 feature films with Britain's greatest living director, Terence Davies. The critically acclaimed Time of the City, which was a Cannes premiere, Sunset Song, which was premiered in Toronto, and A Quiet Passion, which was premiered in Berlin. Saul's production company is called Hurricane Films in Liverpool, and they've also produced Prayer Before Dawn recently, which premiered in Cannes, and Sometimes Always Never, starring Bill Nighy, which was a London Film Festival premiere. Saul has won 2 BAFTAs and 6 Royal Television Awards. Saul's love for a good tale has taken down the dual paths of factual and fiction storytelling, and his most recent feature documentaries are biopics, The Jack Jones Story and My Letter to the World about Emily Dickinson. And Saul's relationship, as he will probably explain, with Terence Davies came from his love and passion for Terence's films. And for a very long time, the atmosphere had changed in the UK, and Terence Davies could not get a gig directing. And Saul got a commission to make a film about Liverpool and he just rang up Terence Davies and said, "Hey, I love your work. Will you come and direct this?" And it's become a a life-changing thing for Terence Davies to get back into directing at that point. And then Saul has supported him throughout the next series of films, which are hard to get financed, but lovely work. So that's it, the background for Saul. I'm going to go flip my plan tonight. I'm going to start more on commerce, and then in my latter half, springboarding out of Saul, I'll do a little bit more about the soft skills and the art. But if you heard me on Monday, if you've heard me before, um, one will know that my passion is that I sit in the audience as a filmmaker, and that's where I started. And I make films for audiences, make things that I believe in. You know, I started out making short films with no money, and then I started making shorts between 50,000 and 120,000 euro, and then feature films up to several £1 million. And some of that is more money than some people will see in their lifetime. So I absolutely believe that you must be telling something that's going to contribute to the world. It doesn't have to be serious. I mean, comedies are vitally important for us as well, especially in the time we're in now. So it's not about the genre. I'm not interested in specific genres. I love cinema, and I've worked across low budget horror, big art house movies, really silly comedies, and at each point, it's the talent involved and the story we're telling. Is this the best possible story we can tell, and will it be useful to the world? Is where I start from. So let's go into this more sort of practical side, first of all, about producers. So if you're here tonight as a producer, welcome. If you're here as a writer, director, interested in producing, or even as a writer who hasn't produced, I'll encourage you to think about, you're going to see behind the curtain what producers do. Secondly, I encourage writers especially to consider themselves producers and to work more and more in their career as producers on their own project. And I'll explain, what different types of roles producers have. As a writer producer, you do not need to have the particular skills, and you do not have to do the nitty gritty jobs that producers do, while still having a producer position and credit creatively. So I would genuinely encourage, we need to change the industry, because writers are still bottom of the peg. Anyway, what do producers do? I'm going to stuff here you will know. Either you'll know from learning, from experience, from your own practice, and some stuff you're just going to know instinctively. But forgive me for putting these sort of basics in place first of all. So it's like when I was growing up, I had no idea what a producer was. You never heard the name of them. Even in my sort of late teens and 20s, when I got into making films, it was like producers were pawn scum. Producers were the worst of Harvey Weinstein. It was money and power, and they bullied everybody. That's what a producer was. And then in my own career, by having had to produce for myself because there was no one else doing it, and then producing for other people, I found that there was a whole lot more to producing that I didn't know about. And then I discovered that one could be a creative producer. You could be the creative guide for everyone from the beginning all the way through to hitting the audience. And that was a massive thing for me. I somehow, even before that, when I was a runner, I'd started reading Screen International voraciously, and then when I was at university, I used to get in the library every Friday morning. I'd rush in to read it, and I'm quite absorbed by the business and understanding who's got money, who's spending money, etc. So if you want to know what a film producer does, sure, you can Google it, and you can find that one of the top Google things is gradireland.com, I think it is. And there you go. It tells us a film producer handles the practical and business sides of making films and TV programs. It can involve anything from raising finance to planning schedules. And they are a driving force behind film and television production, making sure everything runs smoothly and that the creative environment is created. The perfect creative environment is created for the cast and crew to work in. They span all phases of production, development, pre-production, post-production, marketing, blah, blah, blah. So there's a couple of pages here where they tell us all the key things about what a producer is. Some travel may be involved. Here's a list of potential skills that might be involved in it. They were advised that a full driving license and access to independent transport may be required. A low advantageous degree is not normally necessary. So anyway, slightly taking the mickey out of Grad Ireland, there's the things that if you Google what the producers do, that's what they'll tell you. So I have a very simple definition what producers do. Producers produce. Writers write, directors direct, but only producers produce a film. That's why producers win Best Oscar. Yeah. Producers are the center of the business. A director and a writer cannot make films. Yeah. They can write a script and they can write a storyboard and have a dream, but without a producer, a film does not get made. Okay. It's the central piece of the business. Producer finding an idea, working with the writer, getting it financed, often hiring a director, and then the crew, etc., and getting it released. Producers produce. So if you're interested in producing and you've never produced before, the moment you say you're a producer and you begin producing, you are a producer. Yeah. There is no degrees, no certificates in this job. You get out and you do it. Yeah. Producers produce. So the first thing to know about the film business is that my experience is that I didn't know, and I find a vast majority of people starting the business have no idea that the film business is only one thing, which is copyright. It is exclusively a business about copyright. The value in the film is the copyright. There's no other economic value and no other sales that isn't copyright related. So this screenplay that people work on has a little copyright at the bottom of it. And as a producer, you sign a contract with the person who creates that screenplay, and they give you the 100% of that copyright in return for a fee and often a percentage of the ongoing sales. But a producer must buy 100% of the copyright to begin with, yeah, on the screenplay. And then when they make the film, the very last frame of the film has copyright your production company at the end. It can only be a company. And that means that the 100% of the copyright in the script has turned into 100% of copyright in the film, as evidenced by the single frame at the end of the film. So welcome, this is Cannes, Cosette on Cannes. I've been going there for 20 something years. So I think the first time I went was 1997 or 98. This is where the film business meets. You will know it well from the Cannes Film Festival red carpet. So this big building everyone's going into, it's got a massive cinema in it where every night they premiere films. The general public you see standing around to the left occupy a huge area around the front door of this where the red carpet is. And in 20 years of going there, I only went up that red carpet maybe 3 times. once for an event and then twice to see premieres of films. The film business is not um, what's happening here. There's a big marketing thing. This Palais building every week of the year is rented out for international businesses to have conferences. So there's an insurance conference, there's a travel agents conference, there's a tourism conference, there's a car manufacturers conference, advertising agency. You know, the film one is a marketing to sell that building for the rest of the year. So that's the front of it. Yeah, this is this big building. You see the sea over the side, and at the sea side, this is the back door. A lot less glamorous. This is the market. So there are 10,000 tourists around the front, and then there's 50,000 of the film business from the world meeting for a week, mostly in this back door. There's sales and distribution companies, and there's producers walking around, and there's completed films, and there's projected films, and people are sitting meeting. And what are these people doing? They are selling copyright. Okay? They are selling this copyright symbol. If they haven't completed the film, they're selling portions of this copyright to finance it. And if they have sold it, they are selling it as a completed film. And copyright is a big pizza pie. So the producer initially owns 100% of it. They may sell part of that to finance it, and they may sell an equity to even the Screen Ireland's money is equity investment. They take a percentage of the future profits. And this pizza pie is divided by format, geography, and time. So the format, geography, and time. So format is, the original manuscript, reproduction rights for the film, DVD, internet, and contracts are now having to say, and formats yet to be invented, because they originally had contracts without film, without DVD, etc. in it. In terms of geography, it's America, UK, Europe, Asia, rest of the world, and the rest of the universe. And I even saw a contract recently which said, and all parallel universes, optimistic potential sales. And in terms of time, it's for 1 day, 1 year, specific time windows, 10 years, and for eternity. So when you, as a producer, when you buy the initial copyright in a script, you are buying all formats yet to be invented throughout all parallel universes for eternity, to maximize the potential sales of those pizza slices that you can sell 5 years Guatemalan cable TV for €1,000. Yeah. You can sell American TV rights for £10,000. You can sell to a streaming service like Netflix for 1 year for £50,000. So that is what is going on in Cannes. You have to understand that the business is exclusively this. It is exclusively centered around copyright. It's the understanding of what a producer is trying to buy and what they're trying to sell, and then the sales and distribution people, how they divide up that pie. So very quickly, before Saul comes on, just to run through your job description. What the heck? Like, to sit down and describe what a producer does, there's lists and lists of it. One website I found today said hiring staff, coordinating activities of writers, directors, establishing management policies, approving major production changes, blah, blah, blah. So just a very summary of that for me is that what are the job skills here? There's management, there's legal stuff, there's creative stuff, there's financial stuff, there's networking, there's planning and strategy. There's a whole pile of interpersonal skills with, your cast, your crew, the agents, the writers, you meet a very broad range of people from all different backgrounds with all different purposes. There's a lot of information gathering and training and understanding about the business. And then there's a whole pile about your own personal resources. Do you have stamina? You know, are you personable to talk to people? Can you listen to other people? How do you deal with rejections, etc., etc.? So a reminder to go, producers only produce. So a production involves the idea, development, then the financing of that project, then the pre-production, there's the hiring of crew and casting and scheduling and planning, and then there is the production, the on-set bit, the post-production, which is the editing, and all the delivery requirements, the legal and practical delivery of your thing to your financiers, and then the sales and distribution of it. And each project, you go through all of those stages, hopefully, and then you start from scratch again, repeat, repeat, repeat. So that's what production is for a producer. And a producer is the only person who's going from the idea until the cinema screen. Everyone else involved comes and goes in those projects. So that's why it's producer is producer that produces, and the producer is the only one who makes a film. So the key sense of this, don't worry folks, I'll send you a PDF by email to of all these notes. So there's the organizing, scheduling, budgeting, problem solving, multitasking, communication. Yeah, this is the center of what producers do. It's almost impossible for one person to do those things. My own sense of what producers do, and especially as a creative producer, they turn an idea into a project. So I'm turning this light bulb moment into the projector bulb that sends the film to the screen, which is magical to think that tomorrow I could wake up and have a brand new idea I didn't have today, that I could hire a writer, go through all of this production, and in a year or 2 years, there's a film on a screen we're sitting enjoying with an audience. That's absolutely magical experience. So because it's such a big job, it's very rare that only one person produces. So this is my IMDb header. And when you click on producer, it says there's a list of what I've done before, and goes like, there's time to close, producer stroke produced by, and there's executive producer, associate producer, producer, line producer, co-producer. So let's have a look at very quickly here, 2005 Secret Life of Words. When you go into the list of producers, you will see Pedro and Augusto Molivar from El Deseo and Esther Garcia are the main people involved. There's a set of executives, there's a line producer, and then there's a producer, there's an associate producer. This is a film in 2003, and you'll see it says producer, executive producer for Board Scanlon na HÉireann, the Screen Ireland, and then co-producer, and then producer. In 2018, around here, you will see I'm down as producer, there's an executive producer, and then there is Martin, the writer-director, who's got a produced by credit. So there's produced by, producer, co-producer, line producer, associate producer, and executive producer, and these are all different types of people, and their credits reflect them. The person who has been on the project creatively from the very beginning until the very end often has that possessive produced by, or if there is only one of them, it'll say producer. But Martin Byrne was on that project from the very beginning to the very end, and I joined it slightly later and got a producer credit, but it was not to denigrate from Martin's produced by credit. On The Honeymooners, I was co-producer because I was a minority co-producer from a secondary country where the main producer, Martina Nyland from Dublin, had brought most of the money. I brought some of the money, and we shot some of it in the north. So as a co-producer normally means a minority party to it, usually from another country. On Secret Life of Words, it says line producer, because line producers are absolutely the hiring, firing people brought on by all the other producers to do all the financial and scheduling and crew management from pre-production through to post-production, and you leave when the film is finished shooting, and invariably have very little creative input, and often none. Associate producer is associated in some way with talent, and so on other projects I've had that credit because I knew the writer and director, and I was involved in helping them, but I didn't do any of the rest of the stuff. And then you'll see executive producer. Executive equals money. Those people who get executive credits are exclusively associated with the money in some way. As in, you saw there what said executive producer for Board, Scanlon and Heron. So the film board puts money in. Their development executives get executive producer credits on the films they invest in. A person who's put their own private money into a project will get an executive producer credit. Studio executives will. And then there's another type of executive producer who is from a bigger company, working with junior people. They will be guarantors for the money. So we will come back to those in a second. Saul has just joined us. Mr. Saul.
Mr. Colin, hello.
Hello, you're very welcome.
I've just arrived in the Hurricane offices and realised this is the first time I've used the computer on my desk since people started using Zoom. So I had to actually download Zoom on this thing because I haven't used it in 6 months.
You're here.
We're here now. Good to see you all.
Hurrah. So this is a session that is run by Film Network Ireland. It's a community of about I think 15,000 people across mostly Ireland, but there's some from UK as well. And Screenskills Ireland have supplied financial support to do a series of sessions, and this is the beginning first week. And I thought we'd look at sort of broad ideas of art versus commerce, building a career and finding your own voice. And very grateful you've decided to agree to join us tonight.
Happy to do so.
So tell us this: why did you start into all of this?
Why did I start? I think the great thing about film is that everyone has many different ways of getting into it and being bitten by the bug, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but you know, once bitten, you're always going to be involved in film. So I was a stills photographer a million years ago and was shooting lots of editorial for various magazines, including The Face and those other magazines that have all gone by the by now. And alongside my stills work, I started getting into making short films and short documentary films, factual based stuff. And I got to a point where I kind of came across certain stories that I thought might be of interest to the broadcasters, and I started to pitch as a greenhorn kind of documentarian, pitch ideas, having made a few shorts that were doing quite well for themselves in various festivals. And I convinced someone at Granada Television that I had a story to tell and I was capable of actually delivering it, them having seen my shorts, and that they would, basically take a risk on me. And you kind of always remember the champions, those people who did take a risk, because there's so few of them around, and even less these days, I think. But in those days, there was regional commissions for from the various ITV franchisees, and it was Granada, because I'm based in Liverpool. So I went to Granada, and someone took a risk on me and gave me the money to go and shoot a half-hour documentary for broadcast regionally. And that was the start of my interest in what was then television, and eventually grew into film.
When you were starting there, that was, so it was leading by what the idea that you were interested in, you thought would move over to the telly. Did you know what a producer was?
I actually didn't have a clue. I remember growing up watching telly and not knowing that people actually got paid to write these dramas, and that, you know, there was a whole industry there. But I think we're a bit more savvy these days, I think, generally. But I didn't have an idea of what a producer was. I kind of knew what a director was, and it was directing that was of interest to me, because in a way I'm a producer by default, because I went looking for stories I could direct, but then there was no one I knew around to produce them. So I ended up being a producer director for documentaries for a good number of years, working mostly out of Granada Television for the first kind of 10 years of my film TV career. But it's down to finding the great stories that have got a universality about them. And I think the story that I was captivated by at that time, that I managed to convince the Granada regional commissioner to take on board, was a sort of Liverpool story, a local story that actually had global connections and global kind of effect, and touched, you know, the history of the American Civil War, etc. And it was, it's those little stories that can take you into such strange places and give you a kind of universal, global kind of look at the world that has always been of interest. And, you know, at that time when I was making documentaries, I had no idea about film at all. I thought I'm a very big fan of documentaries. I still make them, and I still love them. But I had no idea at that time when I was working as a documentary filmmaker that I would get involved in film. That seemed like a completely different world, and it kind of is. Although the two worlds merge slowly, they are merging more and more now, with high-end TV drama and film being very much kind of almost parallel, you know, projects that you can develop as a producer these days. Yeah, film didn't come along for a long time, and it was actually a documentary that got me into film. So, and it was the Capital of Culture year 2008 in Liverpool, where there was an initiative put together for 3 films to be commissioned to celebrate the Capital of Culture year in 2008. And, you know, we were here in Liverpool making documentaries, and we thought we'd pitch for one of these low budget films. And we pitched for it, and we went looking for a director that I've long been a fan of, and that was Terence Davies. And he hadn't made a film in 10 years, and went looking for him, and thought it'd be great to get Terence Davies to come back to Liverpool and make a film, because we hadn't seen him in 10 years. And that got us into film, because we made a film called Of Time in the City with Terence Davies as a kind of eulogy to the city that he grew up in and left, you know, many moons ago, Liverpool. And that film got into Cannes, and then we were truly bitten by the film bug after that, which, you know, as a business, it can be a disaster, as you know.
So, like, having you learned on the job, yeah?
Oh, totally, yeah. I actually learned on the job by doing some short courses. In fact, when I was shooting documentaries before I got the first commission, I went on the National Film School short course to learn clapper loading, and, you know, because I wanted to shoot my documentary on 16mm, and I knew there was a cheap camera in Sheffield Independent Film that could cross the Pennines and go and get a rental kit there from Colin Pons very cheaply, and make my film on 16mm. But I hadn't ever shot 16mm, so I went on the clapper loading course, and it's all about confidence. You know, you get shown how to do something a few times, you do it a few times yourself, and you get better at it. And it's like anything, the more you practice, the more you use that muscle, the more, you know, finesse you bring to it. And So yeah, I very much learned on the job and made all the mistakes. And, you know, there was no shortcuts really. I just did it the hard way. But, you know, in a way, enjoying it along the way, because the challenge of learning something that you haven't done before is part of the excitement of putting these things together, I think.
Do you think there's a benefit to coming up the ranks and working on set?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the apprenticeship style. You know, the old world sort of apprenticeship scheme. That style of development, I think, is really useful. And you know, long may it last, because you see people trying to skip that, and actually, it's not just about the practical skills that you learn along the way. It's about the mistakes that you make early on that you learn from more quickly, and that you're educated by people who've been through the same process. And I think I'm a big fan of the whole taking it through the ranks. You know, doing it on your own is a bit more challenging, but actually getting connected to whatever department you're interested in, and as a trainee, and then working your way up, is fantastic, because you're benefiting from all the hours and all the mistakes that the people before you have made. And mostly in this industry, people do want to share. They want to pass on that knowledge. They're not doing it because they want to keep it cards to close to their chest. And most people are quite generous and will share that knowledge, you know. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, we've both benefited from a range of different mentors at times. You know, wouldn't have been here or got the experience and eventually contacts and network without it. I suppose the other thing I think about having, you know, I started as a T-boy and a runner, went to film school thinking that when I came out of film school I was going to be Godard, and then it was back to loading film again.
That's right.
And another 5 years of that. I suppose the one big piece of it, just jump on it, that I always think is, you know, there's this joke when you turn up as a runner on the first day on the set, you know, and someone sends you to go and get the Yamaha Wang Doodle, you know, or the long stand, you know, that Mickey taking thing. If you come from, you know, if you get it, you don't have to come from it, but if you get involved in just humbly going and seeing what it's like working as a runner, and you get to see what departments do. When you're a producer, no one can fool you. They can't bullshit you and say this is going to take 10 hours to do this, or it's going to cost 100 grand to build that. Right. You know what it takes, and you have a 360 degree. Plus, you have empathy and sympathy for what's involved in a working day for people. Yeah, no, for sure. No, I'm totally buy into that. You know, you do see producers who've kind of landed there because they've come through some, you know, scheme that's put them right to the top very quickly. And it becomes, I mean, it's a people skills thing as well. You know, you've got to be able to, if you have started from the lowest of the low, as we have, then you've got to learn how to talk to different strata of people all the way up the chain. And you see some producers who come in and are only used to talking to a certain level and don't know how to talk to, say, your craftspeople on the floor without being patronizing. And that doesn't set a good scene or a good set, you know. You want a friendly set of people who are all passionately trying to achieve the same goal, you know. And someone who hasn't got that kind of training, and well, pretty much people skills as well, is going to come unstuck at some point. But, you know, there's different ways of making a cake. Mm-hmm. So tell us then, when you're moving in that career shift between exclusive, you know, I come into it by, I want to make my own things, I haven't got a producer, I need to get doing a producer. So after you've got that sort of settled a bit, you have a company, you know, did you then have to think, was this more about a plan and a vision for that, and what was it involving other people? Yeah, setting up the company. Well, I met my business partner Roy Bolter, who was a writer for many years for TV, mostly on Brookside, and that's where he cut his teeth for 8 years on Brookside, and then did lots of the soaps. And it struck me, as we were good friends anyway, it struck me that we had a fairly interesting kind of balance of skills, in that he came from
drama, and I came from documentary, and that mine was a practical kind of technical, if you like, career path, and his was very much the kind of writing and creative side. So we thought we'd team up, and that's how we built the company. Hurricane Films is essentially him and me, and a small permanent staff, which grows when we have productions, and it grows, exponentially depending on what the size of the production is. Most of the independent films we do are, I guess, in the £3 to £7 million mark, and those films are normally 60 to 100 people on the set. So, obviously you grow each time you put those productions together, but you're not making those as Hurricane Films, you're making them as whatever the special purpose vehicle is that you've set up for each individual film. But the core, again, is, to come back to it, is Hurricane Films, and it's the core of, there's only like 5 of us, and me and Roy are the business partners. So we thought we'd team up because of the balance of what seemed to be a kind of nice balance between his drama background and my documentary background. And we did TV for a little while. And as I say, in 2008, we got caught by this, the bug that is feature film. And I think it was an interesting kind of sidestep because, we'd always both enjoyed film, and we'd always thought about trying to get into it. And then this initiative came along to make a low-budget film to celebrate capsular culture. We had no idea it was going to do as well as it did critically. I mean, it was Mark Commode's Film of the Year, and it was, Time magazine's top 10 for that year, and it went to Cannes and lots of other festivals. So when that happened, in some ways, if it hadn't happened, we'd probably still be in TV, and we'd probably be doing, making a real business happen. But because film is so erratic and so difficult and challenging to make it a business of it, we got caught by that bug. And, it's a passion thing, which we enjoy thoroughly, but it's an interesting case study. If you go back to that moment and think, if that film hadn't done very well, would we have just gone back to TV and actually had a perfectly decent living out of making television drama, as opposed to the hand-to-mouth existence of the independent producer? Because there's no denying it. It ain't easy.
Yeah, so we producers produce, and we go, like, the stages are idea development, financing, pre-production, production, post-production, delivery, release. Where are you spending most of your working life?
Most of the time it's in development, and it's juggling projects, trying to find, and in no particular order, cast, directors, finance, sales agents, and high net worths, if they still exist out there interested in film, to put a package together where you can make your film happen. So if most of the time we're reading scripts, we read a lot of scripts. We accept unsolicited scripts. We'll read anything that's sent to us as long as it's in the correct script format for film. And it's not more than 100 pages, 110 pages maximum. So we will read all those scripts, and there's not many companies that say, actually, we accept, unsolicited scripts, because you just don't know where the good idea or the next story is going to come from. And so we're open to stories that really kind of engage and get our hearts racing and get us excited, because those stories, you're going to have to live with them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you can actually get the thing to the screen, because it takes that long to raise the finance and develop it and get all the people that are your champions along the way to come on board, and to get your cast, which is becoming more and more difficult for the independent producer, because there's so many opportunities for cast these days in terms of the offers they get from streamers and high-end TV series. So, you feel like you're always at the back of the queue when you're trying to get, interest from some A-lister who will make your film happen, because you've had some great coverage on your scripts. And sales agents will always say the same: we love the script, come back to us when you've got cast. It's so easy to say that because it's so difficult to get cast. As soon as you've got your A-list cast, any sales agent can sell it. It's the ones who take the risk on you as a producer before you get the cast that you really want to pay attention to. If they see a really good story and they can see that you can deliver, they'll come on board sooner. But most of them these days are playing safe, and they'll say, no, come back to it. We love the script. We'll track it. But, you know, we can't do anything till you've got whoever, your Michael Fassbender on board, etc.
So, you know, in this proposition between art versus commerce, I'm hearing you reflect that it's the heart of the story that you get interested in. That's what gets you up to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're both driven by, myself and Roy, my business partner, we're both driven by story, and for a lot of reasons. But you know, you are going to live with this story for a long time, and it's got to have universality. It's got to have you've got to think about it not just playing in Ireland and the UK. It's got to be something that can you know, travel, because we're in a global international business, which is really one of the exciting things about feature film, is that you're reaching into dark rooms in, you know, Buenos Aires or, you know, Peru. It's fantastic that you can have a film and suddenly discover that it takes on its own life, and it's being seen in very small theatres in the back of beyond, in countries you'd never even dreamed it would reach. And that's because the story essentially is a human story that has an effect, and has and people have empathy for that story. And those are the stories that drive us. And they can come from anywhere. I mean, we have had, I think we get something like 150 scripts a year, and we probably have made, say we get 150 a year, we might look at maybe 2 or 3 of those and get them into development and option them, and maybe one of them will get made. And the best example is a film we made in Thailand about 4 years ago called A Prayer Before Dawn. Well, that was a lad from Liverpool who literally knocked on our door in Liverpool and said, I've got a story to tell. And of course, you take that with a big piece of salt, you know, a big chunk of salt. You think everyone's got a story, but actually he'd written a self-published book about his experience being locked up in prison for 3 years in Thailand. And his survival technique was to learn Muay Thai kickboxing and become part of the prison team. And that discipline got him out of drugs and helped him survive. And his book, which, you know, we thought was this local lad, is a scally, you can just about string a sentence together. He actually wrote, not terribly well, he wrote a book with a great story that then we adapted, that then we shot eventually after trying to finance it for a couple of years. And again, that managed to get into the A-list festivals and got picked up by A24 in the States and Hanway in the UK. So it had some great people behind it. And that was just one little story. It was a local story that had a global impact, because it's a redemption story. It's, you know, essentially it's a story of redemption of a bad lad going right, finding the right path. And it's a brutal film to watch. You feel like you're in prison for 2 hours, but if you go with it, it really does have an incredible impact. So, you know, the stories can come from anywhere. We didn't actually. He knocked on our door a few times, and we always used to get our front of house person to deal with him, and he would never drop the book off, or he insisted on talking to me or Roy. So good on him for that. And, you know, it became a film, which is one of those magical stories that, you know, touches the heart, as does the film, which is, you know, even if I say so myself, a pretty powerful and affecting piece of cinema.
So 150 scripts a year, you have a team of 2 readers, they give you a recommendation, and then if they both say, yeah, read it, you decide to read it, yeah?
Correct. Well, we have, every script is read by 3 readers. If all 3 of them say pursue, then me and Roy will read it. That's bypassed sometimes because there's some people that we know who are writers, who are friends, who will read it directly. But essentially 90% of the scripts go through our system, which is 3 reads, 3 pursues, and we read it. And, you know, there was one that's sadly, and we try and get through them as quickly as we can, but it's never a fast process. We do try and respond in 6 weeks, but I think we've been a bit lacking in that because our pile, which we're on top of our pile now, but because of the lockdown, you know, it's been a great time to catch up with all that reading. But for a while, we were sadly behind the times on our reading. And there was one great script that 3 pursues, we got 3 pursues, and me and Roy only got round to reading it 3 months ago, and it's been with us for 6 months, which is pretty poor. I hold my hands up. But as soon as we read it, it's just an original piece of writing, original world, really fantastic story. And we liked the filmmaker, and the agent messed it up. Could not get the option sorted out because the agent just was an arse. That's all I'll say.
So, yeah. So once you go, yeah, I'm interested in this, and what you're saying is it's 1%, isn't it? Or like
Yeah.
2%. Yeah. Yes. Let's have a chat about it. Yeah. 100 roughly scripts a year, and you're only saying yes to 2 of them as a meet up. What judgments are you making, and what do you have to see when you meet the writer?
So I'm going to say a lot of really obvious things here, but they're always best repeated because, a script has to be a page turner. There's got to be a reason for every scene to exist on that page, and there's got to be a character and a story that drives you and compels you to turn that page and get to page 90, page 100, whatever the script length is. And it's got to be a rich world, originality, great characters, a voice that you can really hear as you're reading it. And when you read that and say we get 3 pursues, we will contact the writer then or their agent and try and set up a conversation, because you want to work with people as well that you're resonating with. You want to resonate not just with the story, but you want to resonate with their ideas as well. And you want to, because it's going to be a long journey and it's going to take you 2 or 3 years to raise the finance to get the film made. You want to know that you can break bread together and enjoy a glass of wine or a drink, whatever, together. And because you're going to go on a long journey. And if all that's compatible and you feel like you're in simpatico with not just the project, but the person behind the project, then very much that's a go for us. I mean, it rates really highly for us that we want to work with people that we get on with and people that have got a vision for their work who really are clear about that and passionate about it, because we feel that, we get involved with projects because we're passionate about them. And we're a boutique outfit, we're not running a huge development slate here. We're running a dozen projects of spinning plates, maybe a dozen development projects at any one time at various stages of their life cycle. So we want to make sure that we can not spread ourselves too thin, and we can make sure we've got a relationship with those writers or writer directors and know that they can trust us, because we'll always tell them exactly how it is on the tin. We're basically cards on the table folks, and there's no point trying to dress anything up. So it's about a compatibility and a simpatico with the vision and the people behind it. Yeah, it's going to be a long journey, and you want to take that journey with people that you're all on the same side, really.
So is that the same then the other side? Because that obviously it works the same for writers, directors, cast, crew, etc. But how do those relationships operate then when you're looking at sales, distribution, and finance people?
Yeah, so salespeople, obviously you want them to, again, get it. You want them to resonate with the project, and then you want a decent offer from them. And again, we would always lean towards the people we get on with, even if the offer's not quite as generous as another offer from people that we don't think got the project, because it's a people business, and we want to be involved with people that we think get the project and get us. So, we've got a project at the moment about Sid Vicious's mother and Beverly. It's a really nice project we're trying to get off the ground. And we've had a couple of sales agents hovering around it because it's a nice script. And, it's a kind of nice position to be in when you've got a number of different sales agents, and they've all got their background, they've all got their kind of track record, they're all good. But if there's somebody there who completely has lived that scene or lived that world and went to all those gigs, you're going to kind of end up with the old punk as opposed to, somebody else who gets it. So yeah, it's a simpatico thing, looking for the people who resonate with the project. And, they've got to be able to do their job, obviously. And, but it matters. The people that we get involved with it, that matters to us a great deal.
And then how do you build those relationships?
Well, what happens and what tends to happen, because we've made a few films now, is that you maintain those relationships with co-producers or sales agents that you've worked with in the past. Sometimes those relationships don't work out, which is life. That's what happens. But sometimes you have a real kind of, you have a really nice working kind of relationship and understanding, and that they'll always come back to you and say, so let us know when you've got something else in the works. And they do like to know early, those people that we've got close to, the sales agents that we've got close to, they like to know early what you're working on next, because, you know, there's competition out there. The competition is to find the best stories and the best scripts and the originality that we've talked about earlier. And they're as keen as we are to find the talent and the originality that will, you know, tell a story in a way that hasn't been told before, or brings a story that we know to the world in a very unusual way. So those relationships are developed because we've done the rounds. We go to all the markets. We go to, well, when the markets were happening, we would go to, you know, Berlin in February, and then Cannes, Toronto, American Film Market, and not necessarily Sundance. We don't really do that, but those are the ones that we mostly go to. And because we go to those, or did every year, we've got a round of people that we always go and see, and we try and see a new sales agent or two every time. So you develop that relationship by wearing out shoe leather and doing the rounds and putting your portfolio in front of people. We like to put together a book. We actually have a physical book, which is hand printed in Shoreditch somewhere. It's like a nice tome that we slot new pages into when we've got a new project, and we go and put that in front of people, and it's a kind of a way to start talking about your projects.
So just before you come in, I was doing this the run through of what happens at Cannes, and that this is a copyright business. You know, that there's nothing else, it's only copyright. So just to underline that, then in those markets, when you're meeting sales and distribution people, what is it that you're actually selling?
So at that point, we would have a script, and that script would have been optioned by us, which means that we have the rights for 18 months usually 18 months, to be the exclusive potential producers of that project, and that no one else can hawk it around. So with that script that we've optioned, before we talk to the sales agents of the markets, we would have tried to find, build the package really, which is essentially find a director who gets it and gets the project in the way that you get it as the producer. And then with that director, if they've got some profile, you'd hope that they would attract cast, and that we might have one or two leads attached to the project, so it starts to feel very real. So with a great script and ourselves and a director with profile and cast one or two leads, that becomes a very appealing kind of entity. And that's something then that sales agents will get straight away. They'll try and read the script before the meeting that you have in, say, Cannes or Berlin or Toronto or wherever it is. They'll always try and get across that script, and they'll take the meeting having read the script. And if they like the script, they like what the package is, then they'll come on board and try and, they'll make an offer for representing that project. And when they represent it, they won't start selling it at that market. You'll do a deal and it'll be the next market that they'll put that on their list of projects that they then start trying to sell to the distributors that come in, streaming into their offices, wherever that market is. And if you're fortunate enough, and it's still quite a challenge in the current climate, you'll make some pre-sales on the package you've built around the script, because you've got great cast, or you've got great director, or both, hopefully, and a track record with a producer with a track record and a production company that can deliver. And say if it was Cannes, if it was Berlin, they would probably then say do the deal after Berlin to be the sole sales representative for that project, and they'll sell it at Cannes, which is 3 months later from Berlin. And when they say sell it, they'll try and find distributors who think that the project could work in their territory, and will offer a minimum guarantee, again, an advance against potential sales of that project. And with those minimum guarantees, you can then put them towards your budget, and it helps finance your project. In the last film we've just finished with Timothy Spall, we had 7 territories pre-sold on the basis of Timothy Spall, Gillies MacKinnon directing, and a script that was charming because it was a story of an old man travelling from John O'Groats to Land's End on a series of buses, and lots of different territories went for it in a big way. So we had $1 million in pre-sales and advances into the budget, which was, you know, a nice chunk of change to create our finance plan around.
Yeah. So what's happening there is your sales companies are meeting the individual distribution companies from each geographical region. Yeah. They're taking that region's, you know, rest of the world, South America, Asia, you know, North America, Europe. And then they have, as you said, you've got Timothy Spall, Gillies MacKinnon, Sweet Comedy. So they're looking at, they have a database of what the previous sales have been for a Gillies MacKinnon film, comedy with Rafe Spall in it, and they're literally sitting what they call running the numbers. They're making an educated bet upon how much they think they will return based upon historical precedent.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Those estimates are really the most valuable thing you're going to get from your sales agent. When they make an offer to you to become the sole representative globally for your film, they will put together what's called estimates, and the estimates are 2 columns, which is a take price and an ask price, and they will always give you the very lowest they think they can get and the very highest they think they can get, the ask and the take prices. And that page of estimates is what you take to the financiers if this is the route you're going down to get financed. So you've got estimates, and no financier looks at the ask price. They'll always look at the take price because that's the lowest the sales agent's going to get from each territory added up. And if the total comes to, you know, $5 million as the very lowest the film can earn from all those territories, the financier will then have an algorithm that they have secretly, you know, secured in their computer somewhere that works out for them. The risk is we'll finance that to 50% of whatever the ask was, the take price was. So if it's a $5 million take, which is the worst price that they think the market will deliver, the financiers say we'll go to a gap of $2.5 million against that. And it will then cost you several £100,000 of premiums and interest for the financier to make that offer. So that's one route of financing. It's not the only route, but that's very much a commercial route, which you can then marry with soft money. You can marry it with high net worths who come in, and, you know, depending on where the hard-nosed financiers in the film game will want to be first out. They'll say, offer you that $2.5 million against those 5 million prospective sales, but they'll want that money out first at a high cost before anybody else. So then when you go to other people to try and finish the financing, you have to tell them you have to be second in the queue. You're behind $2.5 million of, well, it won't be $2.5 million. It'll be $2.5 million plus the premium, plus the interest, plus fees. It'll be more like $3 million for that $2.5 million. And then, you know, you hopefully find someone else who will come in after that. These days it's getting harder and harder, as always, to try and raise finance, but there's films still being made, and, you know, the streamers are doing their bit. You know, we haven't worked with the streamers yet, but we know them, and we keep trying to offer them projects, and we haven't quite cracked that one yet.
So I'm right on this, also understanding, so that you buy 100% of the copyright off the writer.
Yes.
For a fee, a writing fee, first day principal fee, etc., and then somewhere between 2.5 and maybe 7, on average, about 5% of all producers' net profits.
Yeah.
Right. And then the company, so at that point, what was immediately at that stage, without anything financed, Hurricane owns 100% and is giving us a profit share back, to the writer.
Correct.
When you finance, are most finance deals ending up where your creative ownership gives you a solid 50% of all income in line with the financiers? Are you behind them that they must be all fully repaid out of all the 100%?
So it gets split, you pretty much down the line at 50-50 between financiers and creative. So the producers will own 50% and the financiers own 50%, but that doesn't mean to say that you're getting paid at the same time as the financiers. The financiers will always come ahead of everybody in terms of getting their finance back out of the project. The writers always get a first day principal fee. They'll get either as a fixed sum or as a percentage of the budget. And that can be quite a decent payout on day one. So, you want, as a writer, you want your film to get to principal photography because that's what unlocks the biggest payment. And, it can be quite a nice chunk of change because there'll be a ceiling and a floor offer to the writer for the amounts of money that they can earn, or it can be as a percentage, or it can be a fixed sum of money depending on the budget, the project, etc. Or the people try and avoid it, and we all try and avoid it, but there can be a deferral thing going on there as well. If you get very close to financing, but you're sort of 150, 200,000 short, and you know that by deferring 25-30% of all the creative elements, you can get the film made, then that happens as well. It still does happen. It's not great, but it does mean that you get your film made. And we try to avoid it, although the last film we did actually defer stupidly, and I don't really want to do that again because the financiers will always get their money back first, and you might as well try and get your money out of the budget and not rely on the back end, because the back end gets soaked up by so many different parties whose costs are ludicrous, and you're best trying to get the money you can get up front on first day of principal as a writing fee. You get a writing fee anyway, but then you get a first day of principal photography payment, which is always decent actually. It might not seem it if you've been hanging around for 3 years waiting for it to happen, but hopefully you've got a few projects spinning.
But then, even in terms of for the producer, that distribution money, you're not seeing that at least 12, if not 18 months later?
Yeah, at least, possibly 2 years, up to 2 years, because every territory has their own release strategy. They're not always released at the same time. Some will go quickly, some will wait because they've got other projects in the queue to put out in their territory. So you could be waiting quite a long time to see that financing coming in, and it's a long tail. I mean, it will come in, but the hard-nosed financiers who do this all the time will have a cut-off for their money coming back, and that could be 18 months to 2 years. And if it hasn't come back at that point, then the interest starts to get silly. I mean, really ridiculous. And because of that interest, sometimes you'll never see anything because it keeps going into the money that's being charged on the finance that you had 2 years earlier. I don't know what the statistics are on independent film, but in terms of, say, a slate of projects, 10 films made, one maybe is paying for all of them, or two are paying for the rest. It's a tough old game, and the financiers, I guess, know that as well, and they know that we want to get these stories told. So sometimes we forget that we actually do hold some of the cards, in that we've got the creative and the original story that they need to invest in. And it's not to be forgotten that sometimes we can undersell ourselves as the creative side. And we do think of ourselves as creative producers because we get involved in the script and the story with the writers and the director well before the film happens. And we're on set every day of the shoot, not breathing down people's necks, but just because we enjoy filmmaking and we want to be there and support what's going on. So that's why we're there. It's usually both of us, sometimes one of us, but there will always be either me or Roy on the set of each of our films.
Do you find that actually when it gets to on set and you're a couple of films down the line, you're working with a regular director and crew and stuff, is there what are you doing from the first day of shoot on set? What's the producer's job?
Well, actually, you get to know everybody at every level, and within 2 or 3 days, you'll know everyone's name, and they'll know where to go if there's an issue or a problem. And also, you're there as a backup for the director, because sometimes even the most experienced directors will turn around and say, "Did that work for you?" It's another pair of eyes. It's it's not offering anything more than support and suggestion for the creative team who are putting it together. And getting to know everyone on in the whole team is really, it's just like a team building thing. It really works very well. Well, it has done for us, because there's times when suddenly, there's a trip up in the financing and the cash flow suddenly goes a bit awry. And if you know everybody's name, you can sit around and say, listen, you're not going to get paid on Friday. It's going to be Monday. Bear with us, because they've seen you there every day. They know that you're committed and that you're trying to put this thing together, and you're as passionate about the project as the creatives, the writer and the director and the cast. So that helps in that team building kind of aspect to be around. And also, sometimes directors miss something. There's some dialogue changes required, and instead of going up to the office to ask, can they change the dialogue, we're there and then. We can make that decision. Excuse me. The script is pretty much blueprint for us, and we that's been worked on and honed, and it's normally not touched. But sometimes there's a suggestion of a line or two or a change of nuance, and that's a great time to be there as the producer, because you've sat there with the director and the writers, and you've been through it many, many times, so you can offer your suggestion and make a decision on it, which maybe the director had a question or something. So it's great to be around, and also it's great to be making stories and putting films together. It's kind of the cherry on the cake, because you've got a big mountain of shite to deal with before you get to the cherry, which is actually on the set making the film. So why not enjoy it, which is what we do when we can.
Cool. So one last practical question before we open it up to our lovely guests here and get some questions there. Pop your questions in the chat, folks, and we'll deal with them one by one. Yeah. So just one final little piece on that is you're giving us all the sense of the passion of what's going to get you up in the morning to do it and get through all the tough times. Just one practical question on budgets. When you're in production, how often are you looking at your budget?
Every Friday you'll get a cost report from that week, and every Friday you'll spend 2 or 3 hours with the production manager and the bond, if they're around, if you've got a bonded film. Do people know what a bond is? I guess so. And you'll be going through every detail of the spend of that week, and it's a very, very granular process, and it takes up most of the Friday afternoon. So the budget, keeping things on budget is, a paramount importance to the whole production, especially when you've got limited funds, and you want to deliver, without going anywhere near your contingency or just into your contingency if you have to. Invariably, you do go into your contingency, but you'd hope that would be down the line, maybe when you're in post, if you're lucky. And so it's not daily. The daily questions will be, listen, the generator we've got isn't really what we need. We need something twice the size. It's going to cost us another $2,000 this week. So then you'll do a bit of quick chop and change and see where you can save that $2,000 from elsewhere. So, it's a very live, ongoing conversation with your line producer or production manager or both. And that kind of culminates in the Friday afternoon cost report, which is literally, you go through every column, you see what the budget is and what it was estimated, and then you look at the variance to see if you're coming in or under or over. And if you are, then you need to affect that straight away. So yeah, it's a pretty live thing.
Yeah. Thank you. So Richard Cross is asking, why is it harder to find financiers? Can you see the chat there?
Yeah, got it. Why is it harder to find finances? Um, I think it's harder because there's been a lot of people out there who've sadly invested in film and got their fingers burnt, and they've dealt with, what should we say? Let's not call them dishonest, but they've dealt with people who perhaps weren't telling them the truth about the practicalities and actual returns on film and the potential of the returns on film, because they're easily gilded. And anyone coming into financing a film should know that it should be money, if you're a high net worth, that you can spare, because it's taking a punt and it's a big risk. But then money, most things are a risk, so it depends on your taste for risk. And most investors have a very don't have a high risk kind of appetite, but which makes it obviously very challenging. I think it's because there's so many people have had their fingers burnt, and also that now the streamers have taken so much work has gone onto streaming platforms where they are the one single finance source. That's actually both good and bad. For a lot of projects that might have gone onto cinema will now go onto a streaming platform. But if it gets the story made and the story told, then that's fine. So yeah, maybe it's just us. Maybe we're no good at finding the financiers that we should be finding. But they are out there somewhere, I've been told.
Yeah, so interesting knowledge is just you constantly got to keep aware of who's got the money. So and often there are distributors that we all know. When you actually they'll keep you hanging on. Actually, fine rightly, they really don't actually have any money. They'll keep saying, "Oh, we love you and want to work with you," but they'll never commit to anything because they don't have the money themselves. So Mike Chamberlain is asking about The Last Bus. Headgear, Metro Technology, and Creo are listed there. Are they co-producers, financiers?
Yeah, so Headgear is quite a well-known canny financier based in London. They're very, very busy. They are probably one of the busiest financiers in independent film, and their partner companies are the two other companies that are mentioned there. So when you see Headgear, Metro and Creo are kind of sister companies that sit alongside Headgear, but Headgear is the main deal. And Headgear, we hadn't worked with them, but we've known Phil Hunt, who runs it, for a long time. And he's a great fella, but he's very cautious at how he invests, because that's why he's still doing what he does, and he does it very successfully. But they will mostly cash flow tax credit, they will mostly cash flow pre-sales, and they will take very little risk in the actual equity of the film. They won't take equity. They'll basically charge you for money you're going to get, which is like the tax credit, and they'll make a nice fee out of it. So Headgear are very good at that, and they've lasted a long time because they're good at it, and they're good people. Actually, they know what they're doing, and they're good to deal with, but they're not cheap. It's expensive money. And the other company that's the larger financier with Headgear is Quickfire. And Quickfire are a different animal to Headgear. Quickfire run a fund which is topped up by high net worths that used to be EIS, but is now something whatever EIS has become. I'm not sure what it is, but they have a high net worth individuals investing in them, and they invest in films. So between Headgear and Quickfire, they decided to come on board and split the risk on this project by splitting the cost of all the pre-sales. They cash flowed that 50-50 between themselves. They cash flowed the tax credit, and then they both came in for some risk, and they looked at the take prices on the estimates for the world sales, and they decided that they'd come in for like 25% of what that price was. So they're very much the two financiers on The Last Bus, and they're absolutely brilliant to work with. Really top people. You cannot say that about many financiers. They are really, really dead straight up, honest folk, expensive, but they know the business and they liked the script and they liked us and they liked, you know, Tim Spall, and they liked what the sales agent was getting in terms of numbers and pre-sales. So that's worked out well.
And
Except our timing is dreadful because the film was supposed to come out and then COVID happened. So yeah, that's shifted everything now. It was supposed to come out September, October now. And of course that's been shifted to late spring next year. So those financiers were going to be waiting a lot longer for their money to come back. And hopefully we don't quite trip into their interest. Let's see, we might have to do a deal where we get them to extend the interest date, the start date for interest.
Yeah. So is there Headgear mostly working with Bankside? I think there might be some mutual ownership there.
Yeah, there is mutual ownership. Bankside are a great sales company. We have something else with them, and Headgear are the finance side, and they're sister companies. They share the same backer and the same manager, managing director, I should imagine, Phil Hunt. Yeah.
So, like, even though you're saying, like, you're dealing with financial instruments there, you know, versions of tax credit and loans and stuff like that, even though it's that nitty gritty of the financial side, what I'm still hearing from you is that even the conversations there are, do we get on with these people? Do they get us? Do they get this project?
Yeah, because there's going to be difficult times ahead, and you want to know that you're not going to have to deal with someone who's throwing their dummy out the pram. You want to have a rational conversation, and you know we are in difficult times. And right now, we've got a film that should have come out, and it hasn't, and it's difficult marketplace because no one's really buying at the moment. So we're having difficult conversations with them all the time, and because they're straight up talking folk like we are and that any of us would like to deal with, it makes that a lot more lubricated and a lot more easy. There's a two-way street of conversation there. They're not financiers saying, right, you've got to cut the film to, 80 minutes because it's 100 minutes and, we're not selling it and it's not selling. They're not like that. It's a very collegiate approach, which Quickfire and Headgear both seem to entertain, which is great. And it's not been like that for a lot of financiers we've dealt with in the past, particularly the Americans, which we've met some cowboys and had to deal with some very dodgy people.
David Putnam used to say that you need protected by your contracts, but that he always went with a handshake. That was like, I guess, the same sort of thing.
That still stands, I think. So, how far into a script usually that you're going to try to option? In terms of how far into the reading of the script, or
yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's interesting. By page 20. I'm not even lying. If I'm there and grabbed by page 20, I know there's a good story unfolding here. So yeah, I go to page 20. I try and read most scripts all the way through, but some are a challenge to get to page 20, but I always get to page 20.
And then that final one, internships for producing?
There's quite a few great companies in Ireland, and I have no idea what their intern policies are. We did do this. We have a lot of interns come through Hurricane all the time, or rather we did. Obviously the office is closed. This is the longest I've been in the office, literally since February. And we normally have 5 or 6 young folk in our office at any one time, usually from the general kind of area of Merseyside, because we can't pay travel or anything like that. So there's got to be people who are local who are into film who want to get an internship at Hurricane. I can't talk for the Irish companies, but I hope that there'd be a similar setup where, we say to our interns, it's a minimum 3 months, and we want 2 days of your week in the office, because we know you've got studies and you've got work or whatever. So we'll get 2 days for 3 months out of folks, and they'll come here and they'll do whatever's required. And a lot of that would be reading scripts actually, and seeing reports written by our readers, and so they'll get pretty much tuned into analysing scripts and what we look for in a report, which I think is quite a useful skill, because I'm not sure how much of that is done at university level, but unless you're doing a screenwriting degree. So yeah, we find that really useful. Can't help you on the Irish side, I'm afraid. Even though I'm a producer, member of Screen Ireland producers, I can put the word out and find out, but I don't know the answer straight away.
Sally, I'll address that in the last half as well.
Okay. Nuala, advice for writers looking for producers. What should a writer ask about in business terms? I presume it's a writer without an agent, because obviously writers with agents will let the agents deal with that. If it's a writer looking for a producer, you know, you want someone who gets your story and who gets you, and it's back to that simpatico thing again. If you've got a producer you're jumping up and down crazy about your story and you get on with them, then that's probably someone you should probably spend some time with, because, you know, this is we get excited about stories and we get excited about originality and storytelling. So the advice looking for producers is to find the producer who gets your story and gets you, and try and meet them face to face if you can. And if you can't, then obviously we've got many formats you can do that across the airwaves these days. But it's always good to see people face to face and have a chat. How do you become a producer? Just look for talent and great stories. Well, it's a kind of interesting juggling act between the creative and the financing, and how you bring finance to a creative work that will then end up on a silver screen kind of thing. So how do you become a producer? The great thing about technology these days is it's so accessible. There's nothing to stop anybody picking up anything, you know, your iPhone and putting a team together and making something happen. And making things happen is what producers do. So I would say just start making things happen.
Okay, that's our time. Sol, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I hope there's some small semblance of worth in anything I've just said. But
of course.
Good luck to everyone. Good luck to you all.
Yeah. And so Last Bus, what's this release schedule?
So the release is now late spring, and we're trying to get it into the Berlin Film Festival, but you know, we haven't submitted it yet. It'd be great if it got into Berlin. It's a great festival, and it might be an actual festival rather than a digital festival if we can get across this COVID nonsense. Hopefully we're out of that, but that might not be the case. It's not looking great, is it?
But A Prayer for Her Dawn, Sunset Song, Time in the City, and many other of your extensive CV, they're available to be found on streaming. Yeah,
and there's a couple of documentaries I've made in the last 2 years as well. My Letter to the World, if you're into poetry and Emily Dickinson, you can watch the Terence Davies film with Cynthia Nixon playing the great poet, Quiet Passion, and then you can watch my documentary about her.
Hurrah!
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you.
Keep safe.
Okay, take care. Thanks again, Colin.
Thank you.
Bye, all. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
So welcome back, everybody. As you know, these weird times, it's we have to look after our mental health as much as anything. And I think the Zooms I find very intensive, so we just need to take a pause regularly. Thanks for your patience. So if you were here from the beginning, I was just doing some headlines about producing, and I'm going to wrap up with some more that'll tie in. Sol's covered the vast majority of it, but I'm going to just underline a couple of things. So where are we? So okay. So we had got to this idea that there isn't a single producer. There's lots of different ones, different skills involved in them. So yeah, so it's almost impossible for one person these days to produce a film. It can be done on smaller things. It's not impossible, but the range of skills needed are quite huge, and certainly no one tends to have the absolute strength in all of them. And you know, when I was starting out, I had some sense of the practicalities, um, and a burgeoning sense of the creative piece, but I had no network and no connections. And I needed at various times, and still do, executive producers who will introduce us to people and bring us to people who have money. So a thing to think about as a producer is you want to make a list, and I do this every sort of 12 to 18 months. I sit down and I write down, you know, what are my skills? What skills do I need to upskill on? What do I still need to train on? What am I missing? I'm asking myself, what are my strengths and weaknesses? And a recognition of what am I really enjoying about the process, and what more can I learn? And you literally should sit down and do that with a piece of paper, just to have an analysis about it. I never wanted to be a producer. I only came into producer the same as Saul was because I had projects I wanted to make as a director, didn't have a producer. I had to become a producer. And then I met a lot of really interesting writers and directors and fell in love with, with their work and wanted to help them. And I had got to the point where I could work with financiers. I knew how to speak to them. I knew what they wanted to hear. I knew what, when they were asking questions, what they were asking. And I've discovered a big position in the industry as a consultant producer now in the background. There's a lot of films out there that don't have my name on them, that I've helped get made because I can talk to the talent, and then I can also talk to the financiers and translate between them. Saul is in a partnership, and I think because we have, you know, as Saul said it quite clearly, him and his friend had two complementary sets of skills. Saul is certainly not exclusively the practical side. He's got a creative heart, and his writing partner also knew the business. So it isn't that you look for only a creative producer if you're a financial driven person, or vice versa. Nick Powell and Steve Woolley, uh, most famously for Scala Productions, one usually sees Nick as the predominantly financial side and Steve as the predominantly creative side, but that's not really the truth of these relationships. You know, there's a creative and financial side to all of us. It's just where the strengths and weaknesses are. And so Nick Powell, having had a huge financial background, uh, coming in with Steve, who was the more burning creative side, they brought together this fantastic company for a number of years. And it's a sample of, you know, you look even at in Ireland, there's a fair few of the bigger companies are partnerships, often a leader on the financial side, legal side, and one on the creative side, but it's not exclusively like that. So we had Saul there. One of the things I would tell you to check out is Ted Hope, who's just left Amazon, but Ted was also involved deeply with a company called Good Machine before. Very, very interesting thinker about producing, especially in where we are now. And one of the things he regularly does is he posts these things about what are the skills, and you know, he looks a lot on the soft skills stuff about what, you know, what's going to get you up to work in the day. And you know, so go and look at Ted Hope on Facebook and Twitter, and Google around for lots of talks he does. And there's a little, you know, he constantly thinking about producing and the business. You're going to spend the vast majority of time in paperwork, and that's contracts, financing agreements, crew contracts, schedules, budget, production paperwork, scripts. And the thing I live and die by is to-do lists. Constantly, I have a lovely little thing called Todoist, and I put the title of the project in, and in it I add in, I clear my head every day with getting it out on paper, putting it out. So, you know, if I weigh myself down with the thinking stuff, um, uh, I'm carrying too much in my head. But there's absolute freedom by simply making to-do lists. Producers produce is going to be constantly lists of plans of time when to do things. And as Saul said, it's like producing is probably 70% in initial paperwork, script work, development, meeting financiers, and only 30% in production on set. So let's just have a very quick, because one of the things that probably scares people a lot is budgeting. And this is not a class on budgeting. It's just to give you a little flavor and trying to myth bust this. What's budgeting? It is literally a shopping list. You sit down with a piece of paper and you write down, I need a cameraman, I need a camera, I need a lighting person, I need lighting equipment, I need these number of actors. Yeah. So when you have your project, you make a shopping list. It is simple as that. That's what the breakdown of a script is. In fact, scripts, as I said on Monday, if you were here, the whole formatting that we work with today is a document designed to quickly assess, budget, and schedule a film. It is not the natural document that a writer works in. It's a business document. It's like architectural plans that you can hand to somebody who can, on a reading of it, make an assessment how much it's going to cost. And then by doing the shopping lists, they can work out in detail what it's going to be. So what's the difference between when I started with no and then low budget and then bigger budget projects? The difference is only the number of zeros. Okay. So I do the same breakdown of shopping list for every project, whether I have money or not. And if I've got little or no money, I put in the items in the list and I'm putting zero beside them because I'm getting a loan of them, or the writer's giving us the script to get made and they're not getting paid a fee. I'm still putting their fee in as a zero to recognize that there should be a fee there. And as you go through your career, the budgets get bigger in terms of more paperwork, more categories, more things, and the numbers get bigger by zeros. That's it. Okay. So you want to be a practicing producer, you practice now with no money by creating budgets in the same way. So like normally a budget is this summary top sheet broken down into and again, I will send a PDF with all this in it. What we call above the line. Above the line is your cast, your development, and your producing and directing staff. All of that sort of key creative stuff. The fees for them. And then below the line is everything that takes to produce and post-produce the film. Okay? So why are they separate? Because normally the below the lines are fairly standard. Yeah, you roughly know that most first films are going to come out in and around between 1.5 and 2.5 million basic contemporary modern film. It's gonna, if you sat down and did a proper budget, it's going to come roughly that. But the cost of the script development, the cost of the top line cast, and your director are variables that can change depending on who those people are and what they're worth. So when you're talking with sales and distribution people, you're looking at the difference between your below the line and your above the line. Okay. So the film I was involved in recently, the below the line was about 2.5 million and the above the line was 3 million. And it was because the cast, 2 people in the film, cost roughly 2.5 million fee between them. So the film budget actually to shoot it was 2.5, but the cost of 2 of the actors, their fees was 2.5 million. So on a big feature film, you have all of these categories on your top sheet. They all add up at the bottom, and then you have your contingency as a percentage, your completion fee, your insurance, etc. And that's where you get your final figure. There's one of grand total of 2.2 million. Okay, and each of those groups have these things, which is the items that are going to be needed. So there's a runner driver for prep half a week, shoot 6 weeks, and wrap at two days. Yeah, their daily rate is 450. All right. So a budget is literally your shopping list of what you need, how how long you need it for in time, multiplied by their rate. Yeah, it's that simple. It is time by rate. You put those figures in, they come. Each category comes to the total. It goes on the top sheet, and you find your thing. And we talked about with Saul, he's checking. He's got a staff on there who are on a daily basis watching this stuff, but he only meets for a cost report on a Friday. So a budget is a financing document. Okay, it's a document you bring to your financiers and say, we predict the film will make this. Okay, it is not the final cost report. Cost report is what it actually cost. Yeah, so you make a prediction, say the budget is this. You hide things in it, you bulk things up. Financiers will go through it with a fine-tooth comb and interrogate everything. It on a lower budget thing, when you're doing it yourself as a producer, it's a completely living, breathing document in front of you. It changes every day and is updated constantly. And I'm checking my new predictions daily. So give you an example of here, if you can see that in the categories there are actual to this period, actual to date, estimate to complete, an estimated final cost, and then your budget, and then the variance. And that's what you're living with every day is go, I have predicted in my budget that 800,000 would be the story rights, but we actually spent 820,000. So you see in the variance column, it says bracketed 20,000. Normally, any increase is in red. So you constantly see this shifting up and down. What do producers do? Producers produce. There was one question in the chat about the internship. And, Saul ended by saying, just go out and do it. We had a little Barney on FNI chat last week because people were asking about going to university, and I said, don't. I said, just go in the industry. The lovely thing about going in an institution is you'll have time to build the community. They'll have equipment. They'll have deadlines and focus. So if there's an opportunity to go in as a producer in a course or in an MA, it's worthwhile taking it, but you should think of yourself as working in the industry still, and that you want to come out of that with projects, and think of the equipment and the team as part of your finance of your project. People you won't have to pay for, and equipment you won't have to pay for apart from your fees. But other than that, you really got to get out and just do it. What's FNI? It's community. There's constantly people posting that they are talent that are making things there. There are constantly people posting questions saying they're looking for producers. So you want to find your contemporary peers at the moment and start making work with them. Yeah, so just do it. So we have about 10 minutes left here for questions. Right. Everyone's exhausted. So I mean, we've a small enough crowd now. I mean, you can unmute and ask, or if anyone's got any sort of reflection on tonight. Elise, yes.
Oh, was I? Oh yeah, sorry. I was actually typing a question and then.
Go ahead.
as well. Yeah. Yeah, no, this has just been awesome for me. Just in general, Colin, I just want to thank you, because just to even get the behind the scenes of what a budget actually looks like for a producer, that's very hard to come by. It's very hard to find even just like a template like that. I definitely agree with you that it's more about just going out there and doing it. For me right now in my career, I've been acting since I was about 18 professionally, but I've also been working for an agency for 8 years where we're sourcing talent, and it usually is special skilled artists for film and TV. So I've had amazing experience being on set, but right now I'm in this like crisis where I'm in between industries, in the sense that like, do I want to continue as an actress or produce? And what I mean by that is like, I know you just can't do both. So I'm very interested in the casting. Basically what my question is do you have any advice for someone who is already in the industry per se, but who wants to shift into producing? So from the creative side into producing.
Yeah, I think you can do both at the minute. You're in an interim step. You can do both. Yeah. And you want to maintain, because it's going to be financially insecure in the short term. You want to keep your financial security if you can. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So you don't have to turn. You don't have to. Excuse me. I'm uploading the producer's notes in as a PDF on the chat here, but I will also email it out to everybody. So yeah, you don't need to. You don't need to. I know lots of people who have one foot in one camp until they get settled, right? So you don't have to make a choice between those at the moment. You can do both. Yeah. So it's just a matter about how much time you have to do the other piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I always suggest is like that one should, when one's creating a company, you sit down and you do a 3 to 5 year plan. And much as that assessment of his strengths and weaknesses, personal strengths and weaknesses, you should also sit down and do a very simple, in 3 years, I would like to be producing a feature film. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that means I haven't got there now. What do I need to do? So I probably need to produce some shorts. Yeah. I need to read lots of scripts. Right. So you make a plan for yourself, you're handwritten. Yeah, not typed in the computer, handwritten, a plan as a vision for, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And then what are the steps I'm going to have to take to get there? Yeah. And just slowly take that. And as Steve clearly said to the writers on Monday, this is such a personal relationships business. It's about getting involved in the business and in the community. I don't think you have to I don't think you have to leave what you're doing at the moment. And certainly, financial insecurity is a big piece at the beginning when you don't have money coming in. So keep yourself safe, and then just put the toe in it. It's like start making something with some friends on a phone next weekend. One day, 1 minute long.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just the rungs of that. I have to say, shorts are useful for producers, for the film board to notice, and sometimes the funding schemes insist that you have something made, but they can be self-financed as and small. They don't have to be big, nor do they have to have been seen in festivals. You just have to have them on your CV and a link to say you have them here. And what happens with the financier and a new producer is the financier is trying to figure out, well, this person says they're a producer, have they done it before? And when you come down to that, it's like, okay, so what do we really want to do this with this person? Are we going to remove them, or do we like them enough we're going to support them through, and what do they need? So they're going to need another executive producer, and they're going to need a very good line producer. Yeah. So it's like, when you do your strengths and weaknesses list, if you see that you don't have those things, and you go, okay, so who can I find that will bolster those pieces for me? So
Okay, yeah, because oh yeah, yeah, because like what you just mentioned there, like line producer, would that be the same as a production coordinator? Because that would be the type of producer that I would
yeah.
like to obviously eventually be.
Yeah, so production manager and line producer is usually above a production manager, but
Okay.
they're roughly in the same department. Line producers big and holistic over it, and the production managers fulfilling their requirements. Yeah, I'm okay. I want to wrap up with the questions before time.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks.
Everybody should have my email. You should have got direct from me. So I mean, please don't bombard me, but I will respond if you email me. I will respond with questions, and if I have time, I'm happy to have coffee with somebody. So just quickly go. Well, we got. In your experience, do writers typically take an initial sum or work on a percentage agreement? So the professional way is with a producer will be giving a writer an option, right? So the option is usually no more than a page and a half, and it agrees the terms, and it's a permission document to say, we love your script, don't take it to anybody else. Let us have the exclusive right to shop it around and find some money. Yeah. And that can be anything from €1 to a couple of thousand, right? And usually it's renewable by 18 months, because it's going to take 18 months probably to get the project in front of people, and another 18 months to get the film financed. So 3 years usually is an option period. And then the option says, if we agree to go forward, we'll sign a writing agreement with you. And the writing agreement is anywhere between 5 and 15-page contract, usually under the Writers Guild of America or the UK Writers Guild. Very detailed union agreed between the producers and the Writers Guild in terms of all the terms and conditions. And remember that a contract is about rights and responsibilities. Both parties have rights and both parties have responsibilities in it, and they are detailed. And in the middle of that is detailed the financial payments. And it can be, we'll give you 500 for the option, we'll give you $6,000 for the first draft, $3,000 for the second draft, but we predict the budget is going to be 1 million, and that your writing fee out of that is 25 grand. So every penny we give you before the 25 grand is deducted from the 25 grand, and your first day principal photography is the balance of what we owe you, which could be 25 grand, or could be 25 grand minus what we've already paid you. Okay, plus a percentage of producers' net profits. Producers' gross profits are every penny that comes into the production company in profit. And then it is divided over to the financiers, and then the 50% becomes what's called producers' net. Okay, and then out of that 50% of producers' gross, that becomes 100% producers' net, and a writer's usually getting about 5% of that. Okay. I mean, it's writing agreements is a whole, like any of these elements, we could do 2-3 hours a whole day on, and maybe next year we'll do some more of those. We're coming up to 9. So at least just to say that other people are confirming that they are also 1 foot in the grave, and sorry, not 1 foot in the grave, 1 foot in one thing and 1 foot in the other. So any last questions before we close up? No,
Yeah, like there's just
Go ahead,
like I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna talk too much, but basically just being a casting. One thing I've noticed is just the only place that can't align is being a casting director and an actor. You know, that's the only
Yeah.
so far I'm inspired. But I do agree, having fun and yeah.
Keep it going. Nuala, did I miss your question? Are producers familiar with film festivals and distribution, or some producers specifically set logistics? Yeah, so you go and look on IMDb at a producer's CV, and if they've got production coordinator, production manager, line producer credits, then they're more likely to be specifically on set. And if they've got other producing credits, they'll have film festival distribution experience. Vast majority will because it's part of the market world that they're going into. But you might find that your peer generation of producers may have no film festival experience and certainly no distribution experience if they haven't got it. You know, they may have been domestically working and making shorts, but they're not having any conversations with distributors. And I spent probably, Galway is fantastic because the market in Galway is like a mini Cannes, and the people they bring often are really fantastic. Ted Hope has been, and from like when I first started going to Galway in the middle to late 90s, the access to especially the Americans and very high profile European sales and distribution people was amazing. Didn't do work with many of them, but you could build up relationships there. So yeah, when Galway comes back, start go pitching at the market. Okay, 903, what's the last question? Nuala, what is the division between director and producer, festival entry? Okay, so producers produce, producers own the film. A director is hired in, and same as a writer, no matter whether the director wrote it or the director was involved. This is why I'm encouraging writers and directors to become more producers, because you're going to lose constantly any sense of power around a project the moment you sign on with a producer. Plus, the financiers only want to talk to producers. So same with film festivals. Pretty much film festivals just want to be dealing with the producers, not the writer and the director, but they will be courting the writers and the director when it is time to screen it, because that's the talent they want on it. It's very rare that a producer is presenting a film or doing a Q&A at a festival. It is pretty much always the director and then secondly the writer, but the team will be there. But in terms of film festival entries, the submissions are done by a producer because they own the copyright. All right, folks, long evening again. So tomorrow night is William Stribling. I posted in FNI his film, The Speed of Time, which was released last week. A little short he's made for Dust. And then there are a number of other shorts of his available. I'll send out an email tomorrow with the link again and some more info on William. And his first feature, Bear With Us, is streaming on, you can find it online. He's predominantly a comedy person, but he has done, his first feature was more of a straight drama. And he's a really lovely guy, and same as Saul and Steve. Wealth of information, and it'll be a bit more free-flowing with William than the last two nights. So we'll be doing a bit more back and forth in terms of questions and less of me talking. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for that. And God bless. Keep safe, everybody.
Cheerio.
All right.